kitchen, and for the three of us will be working out better.
Now, have you always lived in this house, or have you moved around?
Well, I built it.
You built this house?
Yeah.
Very nice.
It was one of the first on this side of the street.
And how many people were in town at that time, or in this village at that time?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't any idea.
Not very many, huh?
Oh, Hicksville hasn't grown that fast.
It's always stayed.
Would have liked to have had it grown more quicker.
Yeah.
And farming was not a good way to suddenly become wealthy.
Right.
But on the other hand, you ate.
Yeah.
And in many ways, you were better off than people who were not farmers.
Correct. Because you always could sustain yourself.
Right.
Which is really the main thing anyways.
So you had to have some grocery stores.
Yeah. Now, was the grocery store always where Klein's was at, or was there?
They were uptown.
They were all right uptown.
Uptown was it.
Okay.
There was no reason to build out. Like, for example, I think I was very fortunate that I had a very good life. Of course, at the time, I would have wanted this better, a better job or what have you, but yeah. At age 60 or age 100, I didn't dare drive.
Yeah.
I have two vehicles out here that are in good shape.
Don't drive.
But now, I would have to walk out to the west side of town.
Yeah.
Which is the only place that there are.
To get groceries.
Yes.
I know, it's
In other
sad.
words, as you would start south for Antwerp.
Yeah.
Well, that would have been ridiculous. There wouldn't have been any reason to go out there.
Right. Too far away. Right. Everybody was walking.
And of course, if you have wheels, what difference does it make whether you live on the east side of town or west side of town?
Right.
But at that time, of course, almost all groceries and what have you were within a few blocks of each other uptown.
Mm. So do you remember what building uptown the grocery was in?
The what?
What building uptown the grocery was in? Is it still there?
Oh, well, we're getting off of what I'm not creating the right kind of a scene for you.
Okay.
The groceries probably, I have to rebuild the town.
Yeah.
You see, again, what I experienced in my lifetime is altogether different from what, it's hard to say it that way, altogether different, but is quite different from what was true through World War I and World War II. Then all of these things were pretty much together. And as time went on, there were convenience store over here, like the Sunbonnet Grocery, for example, which probably existed for oodles of years. I don't know how many. And that was
in Hicksville.
But it was near the railroad.
Oh.
And toward the southeast instead of uptown.
And we had a railroad stop here in Hicksville?
Oh, yes. It was.
Yeah, because that was a big transportation, yeah. Now, where was the railroad station at? Where would people
up on
get...
the hill.
Oh.
Right.
Where the old steps were.
Anymore.
There's steps there, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where it was, where the old steps are? Okay.
In other words, between Smith Street
right.
and High Street, you'd have to say. And actually...
And there was a building
before
up
we
there.
slid
Very
downhill
cool.
in the winter.
Yeah.
That was the only real convenience of having the railroad, was that we had a place. Otherwise, where's our hill? Around here is so flat.
yeah, it is very flat here. Yeah. So that's where you guys...
probably have other things more important to do.
No, we don't.
No.
No. So...
But essentially, Hicksville was agricultural, and the Handle factory, and there were several of those, Miller Manufacturing, Crook Miller, where they joined, was all based on hardwoods.
Yeah, there were a lot of woods around here.
But it was wonderful. You know, there was labor. They were paid.
Right.
Hourly labor. There were different small industries post World War One. Yeah, that were here. They lasted for whatever their demand was of whatever it was they were making, and just blew up, just gone.
Yeah.
None of them great in size, but that's good because they hired quite a lot of people and only needed to make it for a short length of time, but not suddenly go to pot and have you a lot of unemployment.
Right. Yeah, so it gave people some...
And this is the area that used to be Crook Miller. In other words, when you go through the viaduct from the east side on High Street and to your left, and suddenly this area, in fact, a number of the buildings that are in there would let you feel that this was the... I don't know what their maximum employment was, but it was quite a bit, probably.
They made handles for everything, huh?
They made handles for anything, yes.
Axes.
It's surprising the varieties of handles.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure everything takes
a handle.
You
go all the way from a kitchen utensil, hay forks.
Yeah. Everything needs a handle. Shovels.
Spades.
Brooms. Everything.
Yeah.
Very cool. And they did it all there. It's very neat.
Well, it was
we must have had a lot of woods around here, like that they were clearing for farmland or something.
This was pretty well timbered, evidently. You know, in my mind, it didn't change that much, but in my lifetime.
I wonder where they were getting all the wood from then, because they had timbers out there.
The timber was here. That's why the factories came here.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't bringing, but eventually, before the factories went defunct, there was wood being brought in here from the south, 2 or 3 states away. Oh, that's the only way. You know where the most recent of the handle factories was down here. Well, it's the only reason for a factory like that to exist here, because there just wasn't the hardwoods. You see, a lot of this that they used was ash.
And the ash borers got that.
You even identify an ash tree when you see it?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, well, most people wouldn't.
Right. Because they're all gone now. Ash borers are killing a lot of them.
Well, the large timbered areas, anyway.
Yeah.
As a rule, what you see around here exists only because of drainage or the lack of it. In other words, it was just going to be too wet to farm, or you had to go to the expense of tiling all of it. And if you didn't have a good outlet, there was no use to do the tiling.
Right.
So, from my point of view, this is why it suddenly, what I remember was when we had Crook Miller, and Miller Manufacturing was still a family affair to begin with. Crook and Company was probably a great deal of it owned through stock and at a distance.
So you had Crook and Company and then a Miller family business.
Miller Manufacturing was south of downtown. Crook Miller was at the railroad, just across. And they both were in existence as I grew up. Not a great source of jobs. I don't think I ever had a thought that I could get a job in either place, or whether I wanted to. I probably wanted to do something different than that.
And you did.
Yeah, always something different.
And you enjoyed it, huh?
I think I was very fortunate that I had a very good life. Of course, at the time, I would have wanted this a better job or what have you, but yeah.
Looking back, you had
really,
yeah.
Considering the Depression was a different period for everyone anyway.
Yeah.
people that had very good income suddenly were lucky if they had an income. People coming along like kids growing up, the best you could do was a paper route, and even that you almost had to buy. In other words, I wanted a paper route for a long time before I could even have a part of one, and then it was usually helping somebody.
Yeah. What would you do with your money that you made? What would you do with your money from your paper route that you made?
Oh, I'm sure you're
go back to the family.
How are you going to take a girl to the movies or what have you if you don't make a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Is that how you met your wife? You asked her to the movies?
Beg your pardon?
Is that how you met your wife? You asked her to the movies?
Oh, no, we were in school, same class. In other words, she lived north of town in Milk Township out here.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to school in the same school, classes and what have you. And she managed to go to international college.
Oh, cool.
Again, which was partly a matter of luck. Like if three girls could get a place that they could have a room in somebody's house and they had a place to sleep. And you could borrow money or your family could get 1 year or so of. And we were very fortunate in high school. We had good commercial classes. Cool. So that my typing was part of my managed to get going in college in Chicago.
Very cool. Yeah, Hicksville's always been big on their
school.
If you
could use a typewriter, somebody could use you.
Right. And Hicksville's always been very adamant about being focused on their school and their education from their kids. I've seen that. A lot of towns aren't like that or as much, but Hicksville focuses on their education and their kids tremendously. And it sounds like they did that even back then. They gave you typewriting classes and stuff.
Oh, that's right.
So that you could succeed and move on.
I think my typewriter, a portable at the time, was maybe $30 or $35. And somehow I managed enough odd jobs and what have you to have that by the time I was a sophomore, probably.
Very cool.
Still have the typewriter down in the basement.
Yeah. You've written a lot with it, huh? That's very cool that you've held on to that this long. Did you write any books? No.
Mentally? Oh, of course. In fact, I think about it every once in a while how much I've wasted my time.
Yeah.
But if you write a book, then you have to find a buyer.
Yeah.
If it's going to amount to anything. I don't think I had any great thoughts that. I hope you'll excuse me. I'm training this mess in my back.
No, you're fine.
I think you're doing amazing. I'd sit here and can't believe you're 100 years old.
Oh, thank you.
I think you're acting like you're 68.
Well, I don't think age was ever. I grew up with a grandparent. My father was ill quite a lot of his early life, and I was pretty much raised by two grandparents, one that I lived with and one that was down the street. The one down the street could do anything mechanically that you wanted done.
Very cool.
And the one I lived with part of the time, just across the alley here, I think to begin with, he probably started out teaching school, at 8th grade. Mm-hmm. Once he was an 8th grader, he probably was capable of going in and taking a class in some other country school somewhere.
Wow.
And all of his life was, I would say, a person who enjoyed being an educated man and knowing that he could know still more. Not a snob.
Yeah.
But a person who enjoyed books and knew how to use them and to make a living during the Depression, which was quite a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what your family history was, but in my case, my father was ill with rabbit fever, among all the other things. He had a heart problem and what have you. And then he happened to dress a rabbit at a time that he had a cut on a hand.
He
and the next 4 years, he was a tularemia victim. He managed to do what he could with the family. Of course, there wasn't much work available for my mother, for her to go out and earn to make up for it.
Right.
He was a prudential salesman, so he could sell on a day that he felt like selling and what have you.
Wow. So he got a rabbit fever from dressing a rabbit?
Yeah, and there were only 2 cases that I knew of, his and one other. And the other, of course, because they already had diagnosed Dad, knew what to do about it, and the man was ill maybe a few days, and that was it.
Wow.
Right.
So he was one of the
But
early
that was
ones.
a pretty mean
Yeah.
illness at that time.
I would imagine. Sounds bad. Rabbit fever.
You ever even hear of it?
No,
I haven't.
I haven't.
I'm sure they.
That's why I didn't stick with tularemia, which was what was the official
term. Yeah.
term for it.
It's very cool.
But here and there around the area, there were people that also had the same illness. All you had to do was dress a rabbit and have a cut.
And
The odds are you were going to have a good chance to get it.
It's odd. And then rabbit was probably a good source of food around here. Huh?
Oh, the rabbit was something you wished you had never seen.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Because
bet
of the
after
gardens.
that.
And because of the gardens. Huh.
Enough that I now and then other guys would want me to go hunting with them. I've shot a few rabbits, but I've never picked one up.
Yeah, because of the
Yeah, you didn't want to
rabbit
clean
fever.
All you needed was a scratch somewhere, and
it. Yeah.
it was pretty mean stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I've never heard of that.
No, well, it was. In fact, I haven't for ages either, but I was trying to think. I can think of other families that had the problem, but again, because they knew what it was,
Right. They could treat it.
avoided a lot of severe. You were lucky if you could survive and make a living.
Right.
At that time. In fact, in my case, I had good grandparents in the area that were, I'm sure, help make it possible, because he wasn't able to. He was a prudential salesman, but you have to be feeling decent to get out and sell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So do you think health was the big restriction back right after the Depression? As far as holding people back, do you think it was people's health? Or do you think, I mean, the ones that didn't succeed and couldn't go on, do you think it was health that was holding them back?
Maybe.
Or do you think it was money?
But of course, even if you were well, you weren't going to be well employed necessarily. In other words, even if you have a job, you're going to barely make it.
Right.
If you had some special skill beyond the average, then you were really in luck. You were going to make it. Because most of there's all sorts of families that I grew up with that some probably had relatives that a generation older that were secure. But if you think of it here, these handle factories, for example, you were lucky if you had a job.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to be able to pay you very much.
Right.
How much is a rake handle worth?
Right. Not much, right.
And the men that I remember that were leaders in industry were going as far as West Virginia to buy logs.
Mm.
And that wasn't that easy.
No, I wouldn't imagine.
But it was a matter of surviving, because they're competing with someone else and they've got to have decent
wood.
Yeah.
Wow. So they were motivated. seems like.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking not long ago that, well, I had a grandfather that was an optometrist, as I said, and another one that worked in a local hardware who could make almost anything. He could make or remake almost any tool.
Mm-hmm.
He and I had a lot of disagreements, so I can't say a lot of admirable things. But, you know, how much of the time do you ever analyze your own memories of when you were 6 years old or
Right.
8 years old?
It's hard. I couldn't do it. Not on the spot.
Well, I'm sure you could.
Well, yeah, bits and pieces. It'd all come back, over time, maybe.
Like the grandfather that I didn't live with, but who was next door, and the one down the street. The one down the street had daughters and grandchildren, and somehow or other he was able to help them. But if their husbands were farmers, they weren't able to come up with much that was needed. And if they weren't farmers, they were lucky to have a job.
Yeah.
The job didn't pay what you needed.
So everybody helped each other here. You
Yeah,
think that's what was Hicksville's
I would
success?
say most families that of the period I'm thinking of, 20s, 30s, were survivors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the people are.
We were fortunate, more fortunate probably, even though farming was a terrible time, most of them financially. They ate.
Yeah.
They could raise a hog.
Beef.
In fact, right along this alley, there were a number of pigs raised at that time that I can remember.
Yeah. Chickens and pigs.
Somebody had a backyard and they had garbage, and you raise a hog.
Yep, because that was food, huh? Very cool. I'd say we should do that today.
To me, this is one of the advantages we had in small towns as compared to a city.
Because you could raise animals. Yeah. And so do you think Hicksville's success is because everybody helped each other then? Because there's small towns. You go all the way across America.
To a great extent.
And there's small towns that have just disappeared. They're empty. Hicksville's still thriving.
Well, people organized in a disorganized way. In other words, at the very worst, somebody would be able to help you eat.
Right.
It might be an organization like the women's organization, WCTU, and this wasn't what they organized for, but they exist. And it was a place that somebody could go turn to for help, or if you were too proud, somebody could reach out and help you.
Very cool. So you think organization was part of that? That's the community stepping up and thinking of the future.
Well, see, from this came some organizations to do these things, but there weren't enough of them, or they didn't exist early enough for some.
That's probably why they became into existence.
See, the WCTU
was
interested in stopping drunkenness and liquor. But there were probably a number of women organized in a WCTU that were also helping someone over here that would starve if they didn't have some help.
What was
Women's
it?
Christian Temperance Organization.
Oh, very cool.
I'm sorry, I thought
No, that's okay. I didn't know what it was.
An easy way to get there, but yeah.
Very cool. That was organized here in Hicksville.
Oh, over the country.
Yeah. And it was
Women's Christian Temperance Organization.
Very nice. Is it still today?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. And they help out communities then.
In fact, there were others that were probably local, based on something that was going on in cities on a well-organized basis, and they never had that sort of a reputation, but they did trying to think of something else.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it was church oriented. You know, there wasn't any organization existing for this. There were opportunities to serve, helping feeding those people who didn't have enough to eat. Be local, you know, but there, because I have a friend that's in the city and he's a part of this group that's doing so in an organized way, and so why couldn't we do it even if it's our own neighborhood?
Mm-hmm. Right.
People helped each other.
Yeah, that was key.
To.
I think that was key right there. People helped each other.
Yeah, whether it was in an organized way or
just
not.
Neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kindness is what kept Hicksville going.
I'm sorry?
Kindness is what kept Hicksville going.
Yeah, or just a feeling of shame if you didn't do something there was an opportunity for you to have done. Reverse.
Very
Not
good.
because you openly want to do good, but because you'd be ashamed that you didn't help someone when you could have. Am I making sense?
You do make sense, absolutely. You don't see that as much anymore. People are...
Well, I'm sure people's memories would be altogether different. My dad had probably 3 rooms for his office downtown. No one else probably wanted the rest of it, but he could have an insurance office. And here are these other 2 rooms. Well, some of them have a lot of used clothing on them.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Red Cross, which ordinarily wouldn't have been involved in this, and he was a supporter of the Red Cross. So my space can be used to store this stuff, and sometimes it didn't smell very good. I can remember my mother's comments on this, but that was happening all over. I don't mean that he was special, or
right.
It was a way that he could be helpful for people and do things he couldn't have afforded to do, but space was what was needed, and he had some space. He was paying his rent, probably. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This is to me, a very interesting period, and maybe it's been pretty well studied and written up, I don't know, but to me it's important because it's the way I learned from living it, being a child that's seeing these things done, what your parents are supporting, or the need of some other kid's parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because to be alive was one thing, to eat was something else.
Yeah. And
Dad's office, he was a representative of Red Cross, organizationally. No income or no job or anything like that. But this was being done all over, I'm sure. It wasn't just Hicksville.
Mm-hmm.
But there were people that probably survived because of things like that.
Right.
I say survived because what would you do if you had a family? You don't have a job.
Yeah.
How do you feed them?
You can't.
Think of the shame of having created a family and not being able to support them.
Right. Be tough.
Well, yeah, what are you going to do about it? About all you can do is get out of it. You either work out some way for them to survive, or through shame, I'm sure there were a number of people that their life ended at that time because there wasn't anything they could do.
They just gave up.
Yeah. The survivor would be through the grandparents, uncles, and aunts, aunts who had raised their families and now had some source of income. A rural area, for example, there was food.
Right. That's rough. That's a rough way to live.
Well, compared to what it would be for somebody that several generations back, you're in cities.
Yeah.
An awful lot of these backyards raised gardens.
Yeah, we still do. We love our garden. Yep.
Is this of interest to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is exactly what I want. I think it's great.
Well, it's the Depression as I knew it.
Right.
This one grandfather worked in a hardware store, and the other grandfather was an optometrist, and both were very helpful in helping other people, either organizationally or individually. And of course, this was happening everywhere. It's how many people survived.
Right. You've had a lot to do with the Huber Opera House, huh?
Well, I'm very proud I had a chance to be a part of it.
I love that building. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it amazes me that it survived. Somebody didn't need that space. Is about the only answer there could be. Yeah, we had the Crescent Theater, which was a little Nickelodeon, where I saw most of my 5-cent and 10-cent movies.
Yeah.
And the Huber. And there were road shows. Hicksville was supportive of quite a little bit of entertainment. There was a Hearts Girls Band that traveled. This would be, well, I don't know to what extent. I don't know how great they were. But it was a means of keeping up music for many families here in town.
Mm-hmm.
Their daughters and sons, like my father, was part of Hearts Boys Band, and the survivor was the girls' band. And
so they had a boys and a girls band.
These things have a lot to do with the culture that goes on beyond.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the people who lived or are living it and whose parents lived it wouldn't feel it so much that they were fortunate that this happened or that happened. Mm-hmm. But it had a lot to do with what they decided to do in life or what they turned out to do.
Sure. Makes sense. It makes sense.
Like there was one of the survivors of Hicksville's industry in the worst of the Depression was the Eula Lee Garment Company, which is an example of how you can trace these things back. But a gal by the name of Eula Lee Hart led this Hearts Girls Band that her father had formed a generation before. They traveled over a lot of the United States back when things were good, before the Depression hit.
Yeah.
And
they were from Hicksville.
Yeah, it came to life in Hicksville and actually survived, so that back in my time, we had a girls' band for a little while.
Cool.
That was an offshoot from somebody that had been a member of the girls' band before, a generation before. We would give people to do to keep them out of trouble.
Yeah.
Like we had a boys' band at the same time. And
just
it
like
never made you a dime, but you knew you were going to band practice on such and such a night, and
so the movie Music Man was reality in Hicksville, basically.
Right.
Very cool. Were you in the band? The boys band?
The boys band, yeah.
What did you play?
My father probably wouldn't have put up with it if I didn't.
Yeah.
Clarinet.
Very
We
cool.
had one.
Yeah.
What else are you going to play?
You play what you got,
What you
huh?
have.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense. So, and that got passed down. So your dad had one. Your dad or your mom had a clarinet? Was it your dad or your mom that had the clarinet?
Oh, Dad.
Dad?
But there had been also a very good arts girls band
Mm-hmm.
that followed the boys band, and they survived in that there was a new Hearts girls band at the time of my age,
Yeah.
teenage.
Very cool.
I think of this often. It was things like this that you couldn't buy. In other words, there had to be survivors from these earlier generations that were willing to put a bunch of kids together and have them practice and what have you, so that it was a matter of culture.
Right.
If there had not been a boys band at the time your father existed, the right age.
Right.
Hi.
Oh,
Sorry.
Hello.
This
I'm
is my
sorry.
granddaughter next door,
You did have company. Sorry, we'll come back later.
It's
Sorry.
okay.
and her friend.
Yeah.
Aw. He's like, I want to check you guys out.
He's over. Oh, he comes over.
What's
he
his
wants
name?
some treats. Walter.
Walter,
Yeah.
how you doing? Oh, and he's got treats for him.
Yeah. This is what he's looking for.
All
He
right.
says, oh,
He's ready for his
he's
treat.
Yeah, buddy.
There you go. You gonna get
Coming for treats.
He's more interested in these new people. Here you go, Grandpa's got something for you.
For heaven's sake, you're slipping.
Looks like you're being interviewed.
No, we are interviewing him. Trying to get all the dirt on Hicksville.
Oh wow.
At least the history, anyways.
Oh,
They're
that's
giving me
pretty
an
cool.
excuse to run my mouth, and you know I
Oh.
don't need a whole lot of that.
Well, that's nice. That's great.
Yeah. It's been an hour now.
It took you a long time to chew that. He's missing some back teeth that
Yeah.
would be very helpful.
That's right. Well, we'll let you get back to your interview. I hate to interrupt you. You feeling better today? How's your back feeling? Not good?
We could trade it off somewhere, it would be all right.
Oh, okay.
I think we'll give him one more and he will.
Okay.
Oh,
I just wanted to make sure. Okay. But it's
check
still...
up on me and see whether
It's,
I'm.
well, so that medicine's not really helping your back too much?
I don't know. I'm taking it.
Okay.
Well, we've been
And I
sitting
can
in
run
this
my
hard
mouth.
chair
For about an hour.
Yeah, that-
He's starting to get restless. I didn't know.
Yeah, he's got a little,
I think his back's starting to
yeah,
hurt.
Such a
diverticulitis.
nice
we
boy.
just
Is
found
this where
out.
he normally sits, or does he sit?
Probably in the
That's it.
TV room.
That's your ration.
We could
All right.
move him there if you wanted to.
All right, well, we'll
Okay,
let you
meet
get
you.
back to it. We'll see you later.
All right, thank
Say
you.
thanks
Can
for
I
the
do
cookies.
anything for you?
No, I was just checking to see how you're feeling today. All right.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later, though.
I'm able to run my mouth.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. Okay, see ya.
See ya. So you still have family living near?
Yes. Fortunately, there was a house next door that I almost bought as a rental investment,
Mm-hmm.
and her family uses it, and so I have. This has been that kind of a neighborhood. I grew up over on Smith Street, and my kids grew up here.
It's nice. That's the upside to small town.
Oh, absolutely.
Big cities has their pluses too, I guess.
The
But
downside would be if your family had a few mistakes.
yeah,
Everybody remembers, not everybody, because there are some new people, but the ones who have already been here have already put you in a spot And I know they don't think of it that way. But like when I was growing up, there were families that we were probably as poor as church mice, but that didn't matter. You still had a chance as a kid to go out and get a job, whether it's newspapers or mowing somebody's lawn. Or
Right. Success is
your
earned.
family was a good family.
Success is earned, yeah.
But only one mistake of a generation or so, and the family was not necessarily one of those. Am I coming through?
Yes.
I understand what
Do you
you're
want to
saying.
move to a more comfortable chair?
No, there isn't one.
No, there isn't.
No,
Aw.
No, this will go on when I should be asleep, and it can suddenly go. I've had an hour or so today that there wasn't any problem at all.
Hmm.
And I don't want to look like it's a terrible thing, because as long as my mouth can run, it's easy to put up with the rest of it.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, well, we're enjoying listening to you. I know that. Do you mind me coming back and talking to you sometime?
No, that's fine.
Give you some time to think of things too, maybe some new things and
Well,
stuff. I know I put you on the spot and
come up with the right
myself.
questions, and I'll
I will
give
come
you
up with
answers.
some questions. I'm going to take a lot of this and use it, but
Okay.
I will come up with some
Fine.
more in-depth questions because
See,
we're both
I
kind of.
love to talk.
Yeah, I
just
love to
need
listen.
somebody to listen.
I need to listen. I like listening. But I don't have all the right answers, and I don't know. I'm still learning. I moved here in 93.
Oh.
So I don't know a lot about Hicksville. I met her, and she kept me here.
You mean she was already here?
She was already here. Yep.
You were
and
very fortunate.
I was very.
Or maybe that's why you stayed.
That is why I stayed. She kept me here, and I've realized all the greatness of Hicksville. I don't want. I've been in other towns, and I've came from bigger towns. I don't want that lifestyle. I love this simple, humble life.
In
I
other
think
words,
it's great.
Looking from the outside, you chose Hicksville.
I don't think I wanted
She may
to.
have had something to do with it.
She did. Once I liked the humbleness. Once I found her in this small setting, I knew I was here. Now I didn't know how I was going to make a living here, but so far we've been doing pretty good. I mean, I can't believe how it's such a small village, and I know there's smaller villages and there's bigger villages and cities, and they're not doing as well as the people in Hicksville. So there's something special about this area. And I'm trying to pinpoint what that is, but I think it's. I don't think you're going to pinpoint it. I think it's
No.
it's a spirit here, a heart amongst the people, and it's people
I'm-
like you and the other people around you that have made this village what it is.
I was going to say, as a teenager, I would never have volunteered that I was going to spend my life here, because we were as bad off here as other places. You know, there was a lack of jobs, or the jobs were very limited,
Mm-hmm.
and but if you look back through 100 years or so, plus 100 years,
Right.
there were some good things that happened here, and they probably overcame the bad things that happened in other little towns.
Yeah.
For example, this Hearts Girls band from almost more than 100 years ago. Yeah, I guess so. Because the girls I grew up with were the later ones that had an opportunity to be in a traveling band.
Yeah.
We boys had a band.
So they traveled. The Hearts Band traveled.
Oh, the original one? Yes.
Very cool.
I really don't have a written history to go back to, but we'll say the other side of the Mississippi River, they might have gotten that far.
Wow.
There were a number of things happening at the time that gave them an opportunity, a reason
To go.
to go, yeah. Or to have a band that could go.
Right. Well, at that time, was there radio? There's radio, right?
No.
Limited
They
radio.
preceded
So
that.
they were the entertainment. You had to travel and be the
Yeah,
entertainment.
I'm trying to think if there's anything in existence for someone who was interested. Like in my time, I grew up with this boys band,
Mm-hmm.
but it only survived because my father had been in a boys band by this Mr. Hart, who was a pretty tough conductor, as I remember the stories. And I don't know what preceded that, whether Hicksville had organizations of that sort a generation beyond. But you see, what they did was they would travel, again, by train, for various
Events.
various events, but I'm trying to give them a name, but I didn't. But in Dad's case, for example, I know that, and I don't know whether a similar period existed. In other words, maybe his period in the Hearts Girls Band, or Hearts Boys Band. Again, if you think of it economically, these teenage boys, that was one thing to do, but not if there was an opportunity to be employed and make a decent living.
Yeah.
You weren't going to get any boys in a boys band. So the girls band survived the boys band.
Makes sense.
And so there were girls that were teenagers with me that were in a girls band, a Hearts girls band, and they did travel some, maybe to county fairs or a state fair.
Cool.
I'm sure they made state fair.
That was huge too, huh?
Yeah, but again, we boys were not given that opportunity, or there weren't enough of us that would have taken advantage, because we're all trying to figure out a way to make some money to get started for college.
Right.
And that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
But it was sort of a tradition of Hicksville. In other words, not every community had this Hearts Boys Band or a Hearts Girls Band or anything like that. And of course, there weren't that many places for them to go, and I don't know how they took care of this. Like for their food and all this and that. Because your band leader, for example, how far is he going with this?
Right.
What sort of income does he have if he puts this group together?
Right.
How do you feed him?
Yeah. And
Sleep them?
and move them. Yeah.
And yet they traveled, so...
And you got to take care of, and you got to travel not just them, but all their instruments too.
Well, see, we
And
had
their
a boys'
clothes
band, naturally, my age group. But we never got into anything like they did. In other words, we didn't travel by rail. We didn't do anything that somebody had to support us. It would be local.
Yeah.
In other words, you could be driven somewhere, but you weren't being hoteled and
Right.
restauranted.
Yeah. That's a lot of money.
And I don't know to what degree this was true of other communities.
As far as the band.
Here it was a generational thing. There had been several generations of these Hearts bands, but it was wonderful to have that opportunity. In our case,
There's still Hearts in town today with the last name Hart.
yeah, but I don't know whether anyone, I haven't thought about it.
I don't know.
But
if
it
there's
was
any of them.
wonderful to have something to do.
No, I bet.
You weren't going to get paid for it, but there wasn't any other place to make money either.
Yeah. And you got to travel and entertain and see outside of Hicksville too. The people that were
Yeah,
in the
so
van.
in Dad's case, they were traveling by train, so they were as far as state fairs and things like that in Missouri.
So they got to see the world.
Yeah.
For say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was probably neat for them in school with their peers. We got to see Chicago or Columbus or whatever, wherever.
True, the various state fairs, and I don't know whether they made any of the expositions or not. But,
Right.
what I remember mostly is the daughter of this Hart that was the leader of this band at the time. My father would have been there.
Mm-hmm.
And he had several daughters who were very good instrumentally, and so they were able to put together quite a band, which was wonderful for the girls in my age group because they did do a little bit of traveling,
Mm-hmm.
which was great. You know, in the Depression, anything that'd get you out of town.
Yeah. You could dig it, huh?
I'm being windy. I hope this is what you want.
Yeah, and I didn't expect anything. I wanted you to be you.
Okay,
So this is perfect.
fine.
Fishing, hunting, that was all big around here, huh? Fishing, there's not a lot of lakes, huh? That's mostly in Indiana.
The fishing was places like Hamilton Lake and
Yeah. That's
See, again,
where
there were about 4 basins or 5 basins, so that as a child, I could hitch a ride with some older adult. And
No
go
Maumee
fishing,
River?
that sort of thing.
Maumee River in Defiance? Or even,
Yeah, I think maybe to the
Jericho
river
Road.
once or twice, bicycling.
yeah, that'd probably be the
The
closest.
river was almost
That's the
too
same,
far.
the areas that you're talking about are the same places we fish today. There's just not a lot of body of waters around here. It's mostly woods, and there's a lot of people that still hunt. A lot of hunters still, and
Of
farmers.
course, the survivor of the industrial jobs had to do with timber to begin with, or this town wouldn't have existed probably.
Right.
And it was hardwoods.
We still have a hardwood mill in town. We still have a mill in town that deals
Yeah.
with hardwoods.
Yeah, it's true.
But we
see,
added FWT, which is
on the west side of town was in my time was Miller Manufacturing, and it probably started from some other firm,
yeah,
and then Crook Miller, the Crook Company, was more of a national
hardwood
affair.
manufacturer.
I don't know to what degree. I'm probably being windy, but we thought of it that way. In other words, we'd think of Miller Manufacturing being local,
Mm-hmm.
and Crook having a wider or more diverse area that they would have supplied with
So
wood products.
Klein's grocery store and Dollar General. Dollar General's worldwide.
Oh, that's
Klein.
all recent.
Yeah, but same idea. Same idea to an extent. You had a family local business that was just in this town, and then you had a company come in that was nationwide.
Well, and of course there were garment manufacturing, food processing, that sort of thing. And of course, what I experienced would be the survivors because, again, I was born in 1919, and when you think what happened in the next 20 years or 15, there wasn't any income involved to speak of. You were lucky to.
Yeah. And you were very lucky. You did well.
I was lucky that I was able to find employment different places, like in college too. I was thinking of this the other night. I probably wouldn't have made it through if it hadn't been that I had typing, a commercial course in high school. And so the next thing you know, I don't even know how it started, but I was working for the dean in his office. And of course, things were pretty bad, or he wouldn't have been hiring kids.
Right.
And that was how I got through college. Not just that job, those first jobs, but they were the beginning.
Yeah, everything. It's cool how it all works out, huh? You can't plan it sometimes. But looking back, it all works out, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, you wonder how you ate.
Yeah.
I got to thinking of this in the night, not long ago, that I had gotten everything in pretty good shape. I had a place to sleep. I could afford to pay for it, and what have you, but eating was a problem, and somehow or other, I wound up with a job in a little restaurant. Of course, I was washing dishes,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, but at least it gave me something to eat.
Yeah. And you only had yourself.
I'm not trying to be special. I'm trying to give you a picture of what it was like for those of us in that generation.
Right.
It was hard. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'd stayed here, there was a limit to places, no matter how ambitious I was, to have worked and earned anything. As it was, step by step, you go from this to that, and I was lucky. I had parents that could have kept my bottom covered with clothes and shoes.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't true for everyone.
Yeah.
And I had grandparents, of course, that, again, they'd raised their families and they were able to be helpful. So it isn't something you did on your own. You had to be lucky.
And have people. It takes a family or a community. Still today, I think.
I'm still windy.
Yeah. I still think today that people couldn't survive without help from family or friends. I believe that.
But again, think of it in the city. You're not near your grandparents and your uncles and your aunts.
They have a lot of money, but I don't know that they have anything else. So, I think a lot of people's lives are just empty.
I had relatives here and there, and really how I managed to get my education. Because in Chicago, I could find sources of hamburgers and what have you that
were extra.
Yeah, you wash dishes or what have you. And if you didn't know of anything, you had a friend who found a place that you could probably earn your supper.
Yeah. Very good.
I don't know how true this is other than the period I knew.
Yeah. That's what we want, is what you know. Your experience in Hicksville.
Yeah, but again, the Depression was...
It was about the same for everyone, but it was different for everyone. So. But it was also different.
People who had a lot had less. People who had less were lucky if they had anything.
Yeah.
I don't know how some families survived.
Probably didn't. A lot of families didn't survive.
One way or another, there were organizations that helped. From a small town, I think it was, you were better off in a small town than a city, for example.
Because of the organizations.
And contacts that you make. We could go out and work for a farmer, for example. You might have made only $1, but it was $1.
Yeah, it was something.
And you probably didn't think it was worthwhile, but you also had a meal when you worked for that farmer.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I'm not trying to make this seem like a terrible period because I was lucky.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, you are.
And I would have eaten at home if I hadn't found work for a farmer or someplace else.
Yeah. Your parents would have fed you. Or a neighbor would have. That's the good thing about Hicksville. I think a lot of people are neighborly, very kind and helpful. Most of the time. Most of the people.
No, I don't remember anyone that failed to be helpful to some of us. And also, my family, I think, was different in that my dad was a representative for Red Cross. In other words, he wasn't paid, but he helped with Red Cross and other similar organizations, and so that the opportunity was there, and if you were willing to have the time and put yourself into it, you could be helping people.
Yeah. Very cool. What do you think the key to being 100 is?
I'm sorry.
What's the key to making it to 100? What's the key? What's your trick?
Dying.
Not dying.
Take me back to the old dirt road where Mama and Papa used to go. Let's sing all them songs from a long time